Uh, Hello, everyone. Welcome to Weekend Live with Cypher Schools. So, every weekend we actually do a workshop that is based on technical and non technical. Welcome to Weekend Live with Cypher Schools. So, every weekend we actually do a workshop. Okay, so just a second. Okay, so today we have a guest that is his name is Shankarling. So he's basically a front-end developer who worked with multiple startups as like Curious Developer and other startups, as well as he's working as a full stack developer now with DevMinds. So hi Shankarlinga, am I audible?
Yes, yes, you're audible, Sanskar.
Okay, hi, how are you?
I'm having a great weekend. How about you?
Yeah, I'm also having a great day. So
Good
today
to
we
hear.
have a title that is Beyond HTML. So like before moving forward with the workshop, the entire workshop. So can you brief out what exactly Beyond HTML we are talking about?
So, when it comes to web development, right? So, it is not just HTML because everybody starts with web development, they go to HTML and then they get stuck there. And HTML, they think that is the main part of web development, which is not true because web development contains a lot of different factors and
Mhm.
technologies which is to be used to create a proper full stack web application, right?
Right.
So this workshop we are trying to tell or like give proper knowledge of front end web development, which is
Okay.
other than everything other than HTML. So this is what
Okay.
we are trying to convey from this workshop today. So I'll be presenting a lot of technologies and variations in the web technologies, which will be helpful for your journey with web development, guys.
Okay. Okay. Great. So as I know about you, like you have worked with multiple startups. So it's just like I want to know, how is your experience working with the startups as a front end developer?
Okay, I'll consider this as a introductory question, and I'll take this along. So yeah,
Yeah.
so I started my web developer career with a company called ClickUp, which is a US-based SaaS company. So I
Okay.
started my journey there as a web developer. That is where I actually started working with React.js. So that is
Okay.
where I was introduced to React.js, and I was completely fascinated by React.js because up until that point, I was only working on HTML, CSS, and vanilla JavaScript. So vanilla
Okay.
JavaScript is pure JavaScript and nothing else. So
Okay.
when I was introduced to React.js, it was so vast and there were so many features which enhanced the React.js. So that is where I started my journey with ClickUp as a web developer, and then I moved on to I joined a community called Curious Developers Community,
Okay.
so which is an open source community. It is a I had a very good time with Curious Developers Community because we were a community of just 300 people, and then within a span of 1.5 years we grew up to 25,000 developers from around the world, from
Okay.
around 7 countries, and the colleges which were on board were nearly around 2,000 colleges from around the world.
Okay.
So after my journey with Curious Developers, I had to I had to start working on DevMinds. So currently,
Okay.
I'm working on at DevMinds as a full stack developer. So
Okay.
DevMinds is a education come lifestyle company where we are trying to converge lifestyle and education because without either of their support, it is not possible to sustain.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
in the converging lifestyle and education, we are trying to come up with a very brief model which will help everybody to lead a competitive life.
Yeah. Got it. So it's like let's say we have the entire. So what are all things you are going to cover today if you brief out in this session?
So for me to brief out, like the title suggests, beyond HTML. So we'll be
Yeah.
covering topics like what comes after HTML, which is CSS, and then CSS is just not only CSS. In CSS, there
Yeah.
are a few more things to be like learned, which will be very helpful for you, like CSS preprocessors, and then there is JavaScript libraries, JavaScript frameworks, which are very important for your web development career. and we'll be
Correct.
talking about React mainly because I chose React only. That is mainly because React is like the most in demand right now, and
Correct.
other an alternative, a better alternative, a good alternative for React is AngularJS. So,
Okay.
but AngularJS right now it is not that in power with React.js. That is because AngularJS is now, right now, their AngularJS is still a very predominant framework, but it is mostly used for legacy projects.
Okay.
So we have chosen to talk about React.js for today, and
Okay. So, and I guess like if we'll talk about React.js, so I guess there is a more vast community of React.js as compared to Angular.
yes,
Get
yes. React.js has a very rich ecosystem and community support. So, because right now, like a lot of considering like starting from startups to big MNCs, a lot
Yeah.
of organizations use React.js because of its vibrant features and other
Hmm.
efficient methodologies, which we'll be talking about in the today's workshop.
Okay. So, okay, Shankarlinga, I guess we can start with the entire workshop. So, I present
Yes.
your screen. Okay. Meanwhile, if anyone have any question regarding the like anything regarding to React.js or the web development or the front end technologies, you can ask in a comment section, as well as we will show that comment section in our live session, as well as he will going to answer all of those your queries or questions. So, Shankar, it's over to
Yes.
you. I presented your screen. You can
Yes,
start your
Sanskar.
presentation.
Okay. Please help me to know if the screen is being shared
Yeah, yeah,
properly
yeah.
now.
You're visible now. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Let me start again. I hope everybody's having a great weekend, guys. Today we'll be talking about web development, which is beyond HTML. So we'll be exploring a lot of web, like front end technologies in web development. So what will we be talking about today? So mainly we'll be introducing you to the web front end development universe, and then we'll be giving you a very brief roadmap for your front end development journey if you're just starting out, and the different types of technologies you can try and rely on to for your projects. And then we'll be talking about JavaScript, which is like a very important part of the web development as a whole. So you should never skip, you should never take JavaScript very easily because it is very important. And then we'll move on to React.js, which is a JavaScript framework, and then we'll just review the whole session as a whole. Okay, so what is front end development? So everybody knows what is front end development. Front end is nothing but what the user sees and interacts with on a web page. So front end is like a visualization of the content which has been created on HTML. So front end as a whole, a concept of rendering a view. So everything the user sees on the screen is a part of front end development. So as for introduction, like we said, front end development focuses on implementing visual and interactive elements of a website. So it mainly uses HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Okay, so why only HTML, CSS, and JavaScript? Like that is because all your browsers which we use, like Chrome, Firefox, or any browser, for instance, it only understands HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So these are like the more ABCs of front end web development as a whole. So no matter how much backend logic or like algorithms or anything you use for your websites or web pages, in the end, it will only provide HTML, CSS, and JavaScript to the browser for them to render a view. So front end development is very important because that is what enhances the user's experience. So what do front end developers do as in their role? So front end developers, they work with UI UX developers and backend developers. So UI UX developers, let's say for instance, I was working as a front end developer at ClickUp, right? So the team of UI UX designers, they used to create visual designs on a let's say on Figma. So Figma is a place where you can create designs for your web pages, applications, or for any instance. So the UI UX designers would create front end designs and they would send it to me, and then I would have to code it down into web pages. And then I have to be in continuous communication with the backend developers also, because that is where we'll be displaying the data from the backend, right? So this is what front end developers do. So the front end developers, basically they convert static mockups, which I was talking about, Figma designs, into dynamic interactive websites for a better and seamless design. So definitions, yeah. So I have tried to visualize or implement this in a very particular manners of having a full four course meal. So for instance, let's consider HTML, CSS, and JavaScript as appetizers, which is your starters, and while having your dinner, let's say fancy dinners. So HTML, CSS, and JavaScript are like your appetizers, without which you cannot start your meal. So HTML is like I said, HTML is just a skeleton of a web page. That is where you create elements. So everything you see on your website, for let's say you see a heading, you see a nav bar. So everything is created by HTML. So you use tags for to create HTML elements, and then CSS just beautifies that uh, elements. Like let's say I give it a black color, I make it responsive using CSS. So CSS is very important because it is a very integral part of front end development, because to make web pages react like responsive and using to make CSS. Hello, am I audible? Hello.
Yes, yes, you are audible.
Yeah, okay, okay. Okay. So and then JavaScript. JavaScript, like I said, JavaScript is like a very crucial thing in web development. Learning JavaScript concepts should be your main priority after HTML and CSS. And I would suggest for you to give a lot of time to just JavaScript, because once you are very good with JavaScript, and once you're on board with all the JavaScript concepts, it'll be very easy for you to get in touch with different frameworks like React.js or AngularJS for any instance. So what does JavaScript do? Like, why do we use JavaScript? So like I said, HTML creates the elements, CSS visualizes and designs the elements. JavaScripts make the web pages interactive. For instance, let's say I have a button, which is a form button. I fill a form and then I press submit, right? So what should that submit do? Like, how should it behave? I That is done by a JavaScript. So what does JavaScript do is it does document object model altering. So let's say every web page of yours has a DOM, which is document object model. So we can see it here. So this is the document, and this is your main HTML tag. If you go through your HTML code, there is a HTML tag in all of your HTML files. So this is that HTML tag, and then there is head and body, and then head contains all the metadata, the title, and all the supporting links which are required for your web page, and then the body contains the content of the web page. So I would like to divide front end development into two major segments. So which is like I'll tell you why. Because HTML and CSS is one part, and then core JavaScript is one part. Because HTML and CSS learning journey for HTML and CSS is very visualizing and very fun. But when you come to JavaScript, it is more like a very verbose and a very hard coding part for JavaScript. And whenever you join organizations like startups or big MNCs, they either expect you to be good with one of them, which is very good CSS designs, because they want you to convert complex UI UX designs provided by the design team to you, or they would want you to be in communication with the backend team, like I said, like displaying information from the backend, using data from the APIs. Everything else is done in JavaScript. So I'd like to divide this into two parts, which is HTML CSS part, which is you have to be very good at designing, or you have to be very good at like connecting the backend with the front end. So yeah, now we'll come to CSS preprocessors. CSS preprocessors, like I said, so that was your appetizers, right? So that was your appetizers. So this was your appetizers. This is your salad. This is like a supporting uh, thing for your meal. So what is CSS preprocessors? So basically, what is CSS first? So we write a HTML file, we write a CSS file to support the HTML file, right? So in CSS file, we try to design the HTML elements. So, but what is CSS preprocessors? What is
Uh,
SCSS? SCS,
hi,
yes,
hi, Shankar. Sorry
yes,
to
Sanskar,
interrupt.
yes, yeah,
Before going towards this Salat wala concept, that CSS preprocessor.
yeah.
So we have a question regarding this. Like someone is asking. Wait, I'll pop it out. Yeah. So, will AI directly or indirectly impact on backend or front end developer, and how do you see it?
Will AI directly or indirectly impact backend or front end developers, and how do you see it? This is a very good question, because it is in trend with the current thing that is going on around us, AI. So AI, it is a bit scary, and it is a bit argumentative to tell everyone that it'll directly impact the front end development, because right now we can see chat gpt has a vision model, right? So all I can do is I can write a basic design of my web page on my book, and then I click a picture, it'll code it down. So like a major part of the front end development is being carried out by AI, but that'll take a lot of time, because there are very complex designs which cannot be catered by AI alone. So we will need front end developers and back end developers. AI is not going to take your jobs, guys. Be very so maybe let's say people like 10 AI will do AI will take up one third of your jobs. That is surely going to happen, but in a very long time. I hope your
Okay,
answer
okay.
question is answered, Shivling.
Yeah, I hope so. So, yeah, you can proceed next.
Yeah. So yeah, coming back to CSS preprocessors. CSS preprocessors, we use CSS to design the HTML, right, to your web pages. But even in designing, you might want to have a very very in detail designing, and you might have to include a lot of variables, mixins, and nested selectors functions into your CSS, which is not possible just by CSS file. So you use this concept called CSS preprocessors. So there are many different CSS preprocessors, like SCSS, for instance, and LESS. LESS is another CSS preprocessor which you can use for like I said, in CSS alone you can create variables, functions, and like nested selectors. What is Webpack? So again, like I said, when we use extra files like so a CSS file extension is .scss, which browser does not understand. Why? Because like I said 5 minutes back, browser only understands HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. It does not understand SCSS. So for that, we'll need to install or use Webpack, which is a module bundler. So what Webpack does is it takes up all the files in your project. Like let's say you have 10 different files. So for example, we can look at this diagram or visualization. So let's say I have these many files here. I have like 3 to 4 JS files. I have Jade file. I have CSS file. I have LESS file, and I have a coffee file. Coffee is nothing but it is coffee script. It is built onto JavaScript, but it has better readability and function shortcuts. So it is like TypeScript only. It is just another uh, alternative. So you have all these files on your project, but your browser does not understand all these files. So what you do is you use a Webpack bundler to bundle all these files into static assets. So once you convert them into static assets, which is what understandable by the browser. So use Webpack for that, which is a module bundler. So this is very important for simplifying your code management. Sorry, and Webpack also helps you because let's say you have 10 different JS files and you bundle it into one output file, which will help the browser to simplify the page requests. Yes, now we are done with appetizers. We finished the salad. Now we are on to the main course. I gave JavaScript the main course because this is a very crucial element of front end development or web development as a whole. And learning JavaScript will never let you down, because JavaScript is used almost everywhere in terms of development. Once you learn JavaScript, you can do projects using vanilla JavaScript. You can do projects using JavaScript frameworks like Angular or React. You can continue it with React Native, which is again a cross-platform development framework. So learning JavaScript will never let you down. And then what do we talk about in JavaScript? There are very few important topics in JavaScript which you have to keep in mind before starting them. Like example, event handling. What does JavaScript do? Like I mentioned previously, let's say I have a form on my web page. You enter your information and you press submit on the submit button. So that is an event. That is a on click event. So I clicked on that button, right? So what that button should do is handled by JavaScript. So the how the web page responds to different events like this is defined by JavaScript. And what does it do after I commence that event? That is DOM manipulation, like a document object model manipulation. So like I'm very sure you guys have heard about the things called query selector, or get by id. I'll get the element by id. Functions like these are used for DOM manipulation. And then again, there is asynchronous programming. I'm very sure everybody has heard about heard the words of like keywords, async, await, and callbacks, promises. Everything comes in JavaScript. And then there is modular development. Like I said, JavaScript offers like a very wide and diverse range of modular concepts and components, which can be divided into classes, modules, and functions. So JavaScript is going to be super crucial for you guys. I don't want you to hurry up in the JavaScript part. Take your time, learn it properly, because 80% of your front end will be JavaScript. So coming to package managers. So like I said here, JavaScript comes with a lot of features. So using these two, which is npm, which is node package manager, and then yarn, using these two we can install a lot of JavaScript and like other let's for instance, let's say React.js packages. We can use these two to install packages. Like uh, let's say I have this project and I have used, let's say I have used these. This is a package, React hook form. It is a package in React. So what I can do is I can just do npm install React hook form, which will install all the necessary modules and files for this package, and then I can just use that package for a better, like faster implementation of my feature. Give me a second. So yeah, npm is just like a package manager. You can install, uninstall everything using npm and yarn. And if you're using npm and you want to switch to yarn, it is very easy for you. All you have to do is like let's say you use npm, it'll install a file called node modules. So I, like I said, I use React hook form, right? We can find a React hook form file somewhere here, somewhere in the R part. So there is a React hook form here in this node modules. So if you want to shift from npm to yarn, all you have to do is delete node modules and then delete this package.json, because node uses package.json and yarn uses yarn.lock. So you have to delete these two files and node modules and then just do yarn install. You'll be easily converted from npm to yarn. So moving on to the next. Okay, so this is your roadmap for all you front end developer and enthusiasts. So start with HTML, CSS, and then learn a few CSS preprocessors like Sass and then Bulma, and then get like version control is very important for all developers as a whole. No matter which part of development you're taking care of control of, version control is very important. So I would suggest or recommend highly for you to learn Git and version control. And then come to JavaScript, like I said, basic fundamentals and syntax. Like, and you have to learn what is document object model and promises and API calls, everything else. And then you can come to JavaScript frameworks only after you have mastered JavaScript. I'll be very certain with this. Only after you have mastered JavaScript, I'd love for you to come and try JavaScript frameworks like React.js, Vue.js, AngularJS. There are a lot of JavaScript frameworks. And TypeScript. What is TypeScript? Like I said, I hope you guys remember about the coffee script I was talking about. So coffee script is just built onto JavaScript. So and TypeScript is also like CoffeeScript. It has a lot of extra features, more than JavaScript, so it will help you a lot if you use TypeScript in your projects. Like it has a lot of JavaScript. In TypeScript it has types, enums, and classes, which JavaScript lacks. So you can use TypeScript. Learning TypeScript is going to be an add-on to your web developer roadmap. And then learning module bundlers. Like I said, if you're using TypeScript and if you're using Sass or CSS preprocessors, you have to learn module bundlers. So I would suggest to start with Webpack, because that is like a very simplistic way for you to implement module bundling, and then go on with your npm and yarn. That won't take you a lot of time, but it is good to have. We are finally on. Yes.
Yeah, so actually, like before moving forward with this React.js, the entire
Yeah.
React.js. So as you have explained a few things regarding the flavors of JavaScript, right?
Yeah.
That is React, Angular, and this Vue. Like,
Yes.
so I just want to know, like, if we'll talk about React and Angular, so what is the core difference we can say about the React and the Angular? Like, what one should go with any of the framework? What are the like key features? Like, it would be help to select any of the free framework.
Yeah, like I said, so I'll try to brief down the difference between the main difference between AngularJS and React.js.
Yeah.
So React.js has a few more extra features than AngularJS, and React.js is just a UI framework. So everything React.js does is just a render review. It just
Okay.
it does nothing but to render a view. And React has a very efficient feature called a virtual DOM. Virtual DOM is, like I said, every web page has its own document object model, and React creates a virtual DOM for at the time of development. I'll tell everybody the uses of virtual DOM in the coming slides, but Angular doesn't has that. And Angular, like I said, it is going out of trend slowly, and it is being only used for legacy projects and supporting projects right now. So I'd suggest, again, it depends on your project as a whole, which framework and like the feasibility of your project. So, but I'd suggest if you're starting out with a new project, try to stick on to React.js because it will also be very useful for your portfolio and your like as a component for your career. And React.js is your dessert, guys. Without dessert, you cannot finish your meal.
Okay.
I
Okay.
hope your question is answered, Sanskar.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Yeah,
it's great. So it's like if we'll talk about before it's the JavaScript all part, that is the HTML and CSS, the salad and the appetizers. So
yeah,
it's like if we'll talk about the CSS. So the
yes.
what are the like key responsibility, or we can say the principle of the responsive web design?
Yeah, the key principles of responsive web design is, I would say, uh, if my screen is still being shared, I'd
Yeah,
like
yeah,
to open my browser. Let's say I come
yeah.
to Cypher School's website, right? So,
Okay.
so if I press F12 and open the developer this thing, I can see the design here. So, what is responsive design according to us is a design which is responsive to all types of screen sizes and devices. Let's say I'm using my website on a mobile phone or a laptop or a tablet. So responsive design should be like usable in all these sizes of different screens, right? So let's say I decrease this. So this is a responsive design because it is getting adapted to the screen size. So
Yeah,
mostly what these days like young front-end developers do is they try to set the screen size here, like they choose a device and then they try to do this. But I'd actually suggest not to use these devices, but to use this arrow key where you can toggle and increase the size accordingly, because using this will show you how responsive your design is and not just compatible to a few, like a bunch of devices. Because these
yeah.
days there are a lot of devices at very different sizes. You can use a website on a TV also, but there is no TV
Mhm.
size here. So I would suggest use this and then try to create your web pages in a very responsive manner. And there is this practice in young developers where they try to design a web page using CSS, and then
Mhm.
they don't find it responsive. What they do is they don't change the present code but add more code to their CSS file, making 1,000 line CSS file. Instead of that, it is very easy for you to get started with responsive from the beginning. If you have created a nav bar, make sure you make that responsive before you go on to the uh, further parts of the website. So let's say you've created this nav bar,
Yeah.
make this responsive, and only then go on to the below, like the other components of your web page.
Okay.
So
Okay. Okay.
this is what I would suggest for everybody to follow. Make
Okay.
the
So,
components responsive and
mhm.
then move on to the next.
Okay. Okay. So we have a question.
Yeah.
That is, I'll pop it out 1 second. So the question is, which technologies are a must read for a full stack developer as a fresher?
Which technologies are a must read for a full stack developer as a fresher? So
Okay.
if you're a fresher, I'd suggest for you to take things slowly. And like I said, you want to become a full stack developer, so you have to be well versed with the front end, back end, both as a whole. So in the front end, like I said, I'd suggest you to learn HTML concepts and then go on to CSS. And then when you're at CSS, you should spend enough time to learn different things in like CSS, using Flexbox, using containers, how to make
Okay.
your design responsive, a lot of other design principles, learning about the CSS, like different properties like padding, margin, sizes, and then position.
Yeah.
There are different positions, absolute, relative. So spend enough time on HTML, CSS, and once you're good with designing part and making responsive designs, go on to uh, go on to learning JavaScript. So work only with vanilla JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. And once you're very well versed with JavaScript, work on a few projects, and then after working on a few projects with vanilla JavaScript, then move on to learning React.js. I'd suggest, if you're a fresher, go on with React.js after JavaScript instead of any other frameworks. And then after learning JavaScript, React.js, you have to be well versed with. For backend, I'd suggest learn Node.js, which is most widely used right now, and learn MySQL for databases. MySQL and MongoDB are like two very widely used. Like in the previous companies where I worked, even in startups and big MNCs, they use Mongo and MySQL. So,
Okay.
and which one do you use for your project? So it completely depends, like what your project expects. Like you can use Mongo or MySQL. MySQL and Mongo have like two different like approaches and models. So we'll talk about that in a backend workshop
Okay, sure.
soon. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like
So
I
is it,
suggested,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. So is it okay to say, as he asked, like which technologies are must read before a full stack developer as a fresher? That is term MERN stack.
MERN stack. Okay. Yeah. I would suggest go with MERN stack instead of mean stack, because mean stack again includes Angular
Yeah.
JS. I'm not against Angular JS, but for you to be very safe and for you to be very with the community, it has a bigger React JS obviously has a bigger community. So I'd suggest go with MERN stack. But MERN stack also try to stick to MySQL, because MySQL is very important, and MySQL is more reliable than MongoDB. So MERN stack and MySQL is going to get you started with web development as a fresher.
Okay, okay, okay. I guess I guess Mohammed Ayaz, I guess he answered your question.
Yeah.
Okay, Shankar, you can continue.
Yes. Okay, guys. The most interesting part of your meal is desserts now. So we'll be talking about React.js, which is your dessert. So why React.js? Because from the beginning, I've been trying to push you on to React.js, because React.js has a lot of features. Like let's say, for instance, I've listed down the top three features of React.js, which is component-based structure. So everything you see on your web page is divided into different components. Like let's say the heading component, a navbar component. So what React.js does is it divides the elements into components. It encapsulates every component separately, which will have their own state, which will have their own behavior, and it'll make it look more modular and easy to work with. Because if you're not using React.js and if you're only working with vanilla JavaScript, it'll become very complicated for you, because DOM manipulation is a bit more verbose, and it is not readable. If you guys have worked with vanilla JavaScript, it gets very verbose. So using React.js will give you the freedom and the facility to use component-based architecture. And coming to virtual DOM, like we were discussing about the difference between Angular and React, React has a virtual DOM. So what does virtual DOM do? Like we discussed in the previous slide, this is a DOM, right? So it has so every web page has its own DOM structure. So document, HTML, head and body, content, and every supporting links that is to be there. That is your DOM. So DOM manipulation is, let's say you there is h1 here, right? So you try to manipulate h1, you try to change h1 into something else once the user commences an event. So that is DOM manipulation. You can do that with vanilla JavaScript, or you can use React.js frameworks like React.js to do that. So what does virtual DOM do? So there is this original DOM which is used by your browser. Virtual React.js creates a virtual DOM, so which is making it very efficient, because I'll be telling you why it will be making it very efficient. So, and React.js also comes with a feature called JSX, which is very fun. JSX is writing HTML like code using within JavaScript. So you can write HTML and JavaScript both in one file. So which is making it very easier for you to build. And developers love JSX files, because the UI structure and the JavaScript and the front end part, everything can be written just in that JSX file. So like I said, virtual DOM, what virtual DOM does is, so every time a browser renders an element, so let's say I rendered a h1 element, a heading element called welcome. So I use JavaScript to modify that element. So I select that element by its ID, and then I change welcome to hello world. So what the browser does, it goes to that real DOM structure, it changes the whole DOM, and it re-renders the whole web page. So while developing a web page, a developer makes 1,000 changes while developing, right? 1,000 UI changes or component changes. So every time you make changes, you re-render the whole DOM, which is actually which is very actually not feasible for, performance wise and time consuming wise. So what React.js does is it creates a virtual DOM. So every time you modify a simple component or an element inside that DOM, so it first re-renders it in the virtual DOM, and only when the rendering is necessary, it converts it into a it changes it in the real DOM. So which makes the development process very efficient. So this is like a very good feature of React.js, guys. Virtual DOM. I'm sure you'll get this question in your interviews also. So please remember. Again, how can we what is the structure of React, like React.js? How can we code down React.js? So React.js is there are two main things for React.js. One is functional component, and one is class component. So what is a functional component and what is a class component? Functional component, so function component is nothing but JavaScript. It is pure JavaScript. It is like function component is just plain basic JavaScript. Like people usually get confused between which component to use, class components or functional components. I'd rather suggest everybody to stick to functional components. Again, it depends on the requirements of your project, but functional components are better because it is very less verbose and more readable. And class components has a lot of it is more verbose, and it has a lot of things to be taken care of it, because it comes with life cycle methods. If it has it has options for like storing state management with class component is being like it is a bit more complicated because it uses stateful components. And functional component is nothing but writing JavaScript functions which has no state. It is like a dumb component, functional component. But class components is a stateful component. And let's say for functional components, you have to pass in a state or a context from a different uh, part of the program. So it takes in the different part of the program as props. So you're passing props as an argument to the functional component as an input. But in class component, you can use set the state function. There's a function called set state, or you can either use props. So class component has this upper hand on function component. And again, coming to React.js, another big feature of React.js is state management. Like let's say, for example, there is this Cypher Schools website, right? So right now this is a web page we are looking at, and this is a button to change the theme from dark to light theme, right? So right now this button has one state, which is, let's say it is in the dark theme state right now. So once I press the button, mouse cursor button here, it changes the state to light theme. So the state management and carrying the necessary data for a component to render an element is what state management actually does. So state management, so it involves, like I said, it involves storing and updating data within a component state object. So what state management does is every time an object is altered or changed, it re-renders the component and makes the necessary changes. So like just like how I pressed on that button, it saw a change in the object state, so it re-rendered the whole element and changed the color of the web page. So that is what state management does. And how can you, like there are different things you can use for state management, like Redux. So Redux is widely used for state management. It is very useful, and it is very predominantly used, Redux. So it uses centralized storage for application state. It stores your state in like a centralized manner, and it reduces it helps you update the state, ensuring like the predictable flow of data. Like I said, it passes data from one state to another. So using Redux is going to help you with that. React context API is another way to use state management. Again, another React.js feature is introducing you to hooks. Hooks. What are hooks? Like the word itself says, hooks is what like keeps you connected with the context and the required data for a component. So hooks have been recently introduced in React 16.8 version. So they allow you to use state features without writing a class. So before 16.8, you do not have the freedom to use your state management in functional components. But ever since hooks came, these work very actively with functional components for state management. So what this does is it isolates the JavaScript functions, and the only keeps the reusable part from the functional component. So with React hooks, like I said, we can use state and other React functions inside a functional component from the version 16.8 onwards. So this is an example for the use state hook. So there are many different hooks in React.js. Like we can see a few of them on my screen right now. So the first one is use state. So what it is obviously used to manage states between different components. So what it does is it returns a stateful value and updated function with it. So I'll be showing an example here. So this is an example for use state hook. So what are hooks? Like I said, those are used for state management, right? So we can see here there is this use state hook we have used here. So it is nothing but an array with two variables. One variable is to store the state, and then the other variable is used to update the state. Like let's say I just showed a button on Cypher School's website. So they have used use state method for that. Let's assume they've used use state hook for that. So once I press that button, we can call a set count function, and then inside the bracket we can pass in button pressed on. So get stored into count. That'll get stored into here using this function. So these are two variables which are passed as an array in the use state function. Like let's say here this is an example for a counter. Say every time the user clicks on the button, it adds one count to the count. So like I said, they call set count function, and then they add one to the count. So it is just like a counter function. So if you click it three times, so what it'll do is it'll call set count three times, and every time the count is being stored, it'll add one to it. So that is what use state does. And then use effects are mainly used for API calls and subscriptions and timers, because let's say you have a timer on your website, and then after that timer you want the state to be changed. You can use effect for that. And then use context, again it returns a current value as a context to the different component. And these are a few more states, like memos. It breaks down the required data into small components, and then it passes down to the different components. Like let's say I have a set of different information that is to be a state that is to be passed on to a different component. We can use memo to take one part of it, that which is very useful, because the memoized value is going to increase the performance hugely instead of taking the whole part. And then use callback function. So callback functions is very widely used. Just like the name suggests, there are a lot of uh, um, instances where you have to send back data to a component, but you don't have, there is no necessary for you to render the element right then. You just wanted the state to be carried on to a different component without re-rendering. That is where when you can use callback uh, hook. So these were some of the hooks. I'll be showing you a bit of code for you to understand. So this is a project which I worked on. This was my first project in React.js. I'm showing you this project to make sure you guys don't do the same mistakes like I did. So this is the React.js project. Like I said here, I've used a lot of hooks. Use disclosure is another hook which can be used for buttons mainly, buttons or drop down boxes or many other UI components like that. Use ref is another hook which can be used. Use state obviously, which we talked about, and then there are a few more hooks which can be used. So whenever you're writing React.js code, so once you install React.js, these files come with the React.js. So node modules contains all the necessary node modules which you want, and then inside public, you can add all your assets, and then inside source there is this file called JSX, popup.jsx. With this, here is where you'll be writing, like I mentioned, HTML like code with JavaScript. So you can see here I've included JavaScript here, and if you come a bit down, you can see HTML also here. So this is what JSX allows you to do. So let's come back to
Hi, Shankar. Just want to interrupt you for a while.
yeah, 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 yeah,
Actually, we have a question. That
yeah.
is, one second, I'll pop it up. Yeah. So the question is, what are the current booming technologies that are used in backend process?
The current booming technologies that are being used in backend processes is like I said again, backend is not just one thing. So there are many different
Yeah.
parts in backend. Like let's say for your storage, there are databases which you have to be familiar with. Like I
Hmm.
said, for storage databases, I'd if you talk about top two, I'd just tell learn MySQL and MongoDB. And then if
Hmm.
you're more curious, you can try Postgres SQL, and that is
Okay.
the databases part. And then if you're learning again, backend also has this cloud functions, like cloud technologies. And the top cloud technologies being used is AWS GCP, which is Google Cloud Platform, and Microsoft
As yeah.
Azure, yeah. And to manage all this, like I said again, Node.js is a very good thing for backend. Node.js and Flask is what I'd suggest you to go on with. Django is also a good thing. So top three for backend, this thing is Django, Node.js, and Flask. I'd like to place it like that. And then for databases,
Okay.
it is MySQL and MongoDB.
Okay. Okay.
And then for cloud, it is GCP, AWS, and Azure.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
And then to keep
So.
this all seamlessly going, you just have to learn CI/CD pipeline, so that every time you uh, you develop your projects and make changes, you don't have to do it in every component. You can just build a pipeline which will carry the changes through all the components,
Mhm.
starting from design to your hosting.
Okay. 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 So I guess Rohit, he answered your question. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, Shankar. So you can move forward.
Sure, Sanskar. So yeah, coming back to our code. So I have extracted a very few things from this big main file into this shorter file for you to understand a few concepts, like importing necessary files for your necessary classes and libraries for your project, for your file. So here I'm using use effect and use state, right? So I've imported that from React. So like I said, use effect, use state are all hooks of React. So I've included them, imported them from React here. And this is an external package that I'm using. So I installed this package using npm. So I just went npm install React hook form. So that installed all the necessary files required for the React hook form onto this node modules directory. And then I can use this use form function onto my code. So here I have a function pop-up. I have written a basic function called pop-up. So what I'm doing here is I have declared a few states. So let's say this use disclosure. This can be used for buttons or drop down boxes. So let's say this is open, on close. So for instance, let's say there is this Chrome extension, right? Uh, so there is this. So this is a drop down right now. So this is a button. So once I click on that button, a event is recorded. So once I click on this, there is an object which is looking for changes. Once the object is changed, it re-renders the whole view. So the hook, what it does here is it changes from is open to on close. Once I close the thing here, it goes to on close. So I press this, right? So right now it is on is open. So if I press it again, it is on close. So this is how the state is recorded. So like, is the drop down open now? If it is open, it renders a view with the drop down open. If I press it, it closes. So it will render a view with the closed drop down. So this is one example for your like hook use disclosure. And use state, again, like I said, it is just an array of two variables. So if somebody ever asks you what is use state and why is it used, you can just tell use state is an array of two variables. The one variable carries the state and the other variable is used to set the state. So here spaces carries the state, and then set spaces sets that state. So like let's say I've used use effect hook here. So use effect, like I said, it is mainly used for API calls. So I am fetching let's say some sort of data from xyz.com. So I've done that using fetch function, which is again going back to your JavaScript. That is where you have to learn all these. So going back, I use fetch function to fetch some data from this API. So these are just the method for that API call. And then headers, again, headers usually contains things like access, like authorization, access tokens, things like that. So I'm fetching const data from this API. So I have this data now. So I have to store this data onto as a state so that I can use this data for some other components on the website. So let's say I took this data, so I'm using that set spaces. Like I said, the second variable is to set the state. So I'm using this set spaces. I'm taking this data, so I'm passing that into the set spaces function, which stores this j.data.spaces onto spaces. So right now this spaces here contains this data which I fetched from this API call. So this is how we can use use state function. And then use effect, like I said, use effect is mostly done for API calls, because API calls, these hooks also act as promises, because you never know if an API is going to be successful, or it is pending, or it is still fetching this thing. So use effect is used for API calls. And then, like I said, there are different hooks. So this is like a basic like implementation of your React.js, this thing. And like I said, I've done Webpack here because I've used JSX here. I'll have to convert it into JavaScript, right? So I've used Webpack here. So webpack.config.js. So if you guys can see here, I've included the output file here. So this is the output, this is the entry. So I've sent entry as popup.jsx. So that is my entry file. So I'll bundle it into a JS file. I'll convert it into you can see entry is this, and then the output. The browser can only understand JS, HTML, and CSS, right? So I've converted that file into JS here. You can see name.jsx, JS, from JSX to JS. So this is why we use Webpack for. So this is it for today's workshop, guys. I hope you guys have understood the basics of React.js and how to get started with React.js. So if you guys are wondering what this is, this big thing here right now, this is a part of a UI framework in React.js. So in React.js, there are a lot of UI frameworks. Like let's say I'll show you. So this Chakra UI. So this you can use this UI. So this is like Bootstrap for CSS. So this is like Bootstrap for React.js. So it comes with a lot of components. Like let's say you need different tabs. So you can just use this. You can import this, and then it'll create UI like this. So these are like ready-made code, like how you use for CSS Bootstrap. So this is for React.js, JSX. And then guys, if you want design
Monica,
inspiration. Yeah, Sanskar.
sorry to interrupt, Shankar.
Yeah,
Actually, we have a question that is
yeah.
asked by Monish. That is, sir, I want to build a portfolio website, and I want 2D and 3D animation, and which framework is good for that?
2D and 3D animations. Which framework is good for it? So there are two ways you can get this done. You can use there are different JavaScript libraries which can use for 3D animations, or you
Okay,
can just create your own 3D animation and use that as an asset file. You can create your 3D animations on different softwares like Blender or anything. You can use
okay,
that and put it or load it onto your directory, project directory, and use that as an asset. Or you can use different JavaScript libraries to, for instance, let's say you're visualizing a data onto your, you have a set of data which you want to visualize in 3D. So there are different 3D animations and visualizing JavaScript uh, libraries which you can use.
okay, okay,
If your
okay.
framework, if you're talking about framework, I'd still stick on to React.js. But for
Mhm.
3D and 2D animations, like I said, there are two ways you can do it.
Okay, so I guess Monishi answered your question. And Shankar, if we'll talk about the React JS, so I
Yeah.
have this question. That is, do we have resources where we can like a kind of a cheat sheet kind of a thing? So like we can refer those things for the quick kind of a thing. Like we can immediately work on this if we want something to know, like how this can be done. A cheat sheet kind of
S-
a thing.
A cheat sheet kind of thing. I'd suggest if you're starting with React.js right now, I'd suggest for
Yeah.
you to learn the best way you can know what is React.js is. First, know what are the benefits of React.js.
Okay.
And then once you know the benefits of React.js, just start learning the different features of React.js. Like I said, we went on learning about functional and class components, which is a feature. Then we
Mm-hmm.
went on to learn about what state management is. And
Mm-hmm.
then when we touched state management, we got to know about things like Redux and React context APIs.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Yeah.
when we went on to another feature, which is hooks. So in hooks, we learned about different hooks like use state, use effect, use
Mm-hmm.
context, use reducer, use callback. So these are different hooks. So once you're done with hooks, start working with that. I'm suggesting use this, the flow of data, which is learning about features and then going on to function and class components. Try working with a few functional components and class components, and then learn about state management. Go in the same flow and use this as your cheat sheet. This is the best way you can do instead of
Okay.
having like a brief of cheat sheet, traditional ones.
Okay. Okay. So can you suggest, like, if someone is starting a career in a React or he want to learn React, so
Yeah.
can you suggest few of the projects like he can do as a fresher, or he can make few of the project as his or her for his or her portfolio, that kind of thing.
Yeah, okay. If you're like starting out with front end development and you want to learn, try out things with React, I would suggest for
Yeah.
you to build a portfolio first, because while building a portfolio, you might take a lot of time, but you're also doing it
Mm-hmm.
to showcase to everyone that you can design, and you've done it onto your portfolio. So start
Mm-hmm.
doing a few portfolio projects. But if you've never started front end development and you want to do something, I suggest create static pages first, and then
Mm-hmm.
make it responsive for the second step, and then
Mm-hmm.
start including interactive things and dynamic elements on your web page, and then
Okay.
go on to React.js, where you'll do all this. You'll use complex methods like ideas like state management, hooks. Use all this, and then use different bundlers like Webpack and SCSS. It is
Mm-hmm.
not predominantly required for you to use Webpack, but it is good to know Webpack. So do that, and then if you need design inspirations, there is a website called I'll show it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Just go on to Google and then do search for CSS rewards. So there is this website called CSS rewards. So
Okay.
it contains this is just a website where you can get a lot of websites which are like uh, very good and very good portfolios, business websites. So if you can come here
Mm-hmm.
and search, let's say you're building a portfolio, right?
Mm-hmm.
So just type portfolio and you'll get a few portfolios here, and then go
Mm-hmm.
on to them, and then you can check the website live. So this will give you a lot of design inspirations. For instance, let's see this. So
Okay.
this is a website. So this is such a good portfolio because there are a lot of moving objects, if you can see. So once I
Mm-hmm.
scroll, there are like 4 to 5 components on the website which are moving.
Mm-hmm.
So if I keep scrolling, the things just keep changing. So if you need a lot of design inspirations, I would suggest you go onto this website and just search whatever you want, like which domain you're working the website on. So if it is just a product website, something like this would help.
Okay.
See, so something like this would help. Again, here
Mm-hmm.
there are a lot of moving objects, and this this is responsive because see, move my cursor here. The shoes actually makes a few changes according to the
Mm-hmm.
hover event. Because I'm
Okay.
hovering on this, it is making some changes. So for design inspirations, if you would want me to show a very good portfolio, so this is a portfolio by a person called Patrick Heng.
Mm-hmm.
So look at the amount of work it has taken to make this portfolio. So if you can see the elements on the components on here, everything is
Mm-hmm.
dynamic. So if I hover
Yeah.
on this, it gets jiggly here. You can check it here also. The underline is moving, and then once you
Mm-hmm.
keep scrolling, every component is dynamic. It is responsive. And if I just keep scrolling, the color changes,
Mm-hmm.
and I can just keep doing it. So if you need design inspirations, I suggest stick to CSS rewards and try working on your portfolio first,
Okay.
and then go on to working on complex projects like with the backend. Because with the backend you'll get this flow of connecting, making API calls, and then displaying the data from the backend.
Mm-hmm.
And then try to isolate your processes. Like first work on a design UI UX part. If you're working on the projects all by yourself, work on
Mm-hmm.
the UI UX part, and then try to convert it into a web page, and then try to visualize data from the backend, picking up from the backend. So that is how I would suggest you to go on with.
Okay. Okay. So one more question we have, like how can one effectively manage or organize the front end, the code base to improve the maintainability and scalability?
So how do you manage
Let's say one have, yeah, yeah. So
the
I'll repeat
front
question
end
if you
code?
want.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So the question is like how one can effectively manage the code base of front end in terms of maintainability and the scalability.
Like I said, the best way for you to do is to not do what I've done here. So, so this is, like I said,
Okay.
this is my React.js.
Okay.
This is my first project in React.js. So I opened
Mm-hmm.
this project. Thanks for this question because I had missed it out. So
Yeah.
the main reason I opened this project and not other projects is because you can see a lot of code here, and
Uh,
this file alone goes till what around 1,000 pages, 1,000 lines.
yeah.
So this is not even 1% modular, not 1% readable, and it depends. It decreases the efficiency of the project. So what I'd say is
Mm-hmm.
try to isolate your processes, like keep the design components and the designing part separate, keep the middleware separate, uh, and the other there. So if you consider a web page, there are different components. It's like there is
Mm-hmm.
content, and then there is these dynamic elements, and then there is a few constants. So try to keep them separate so that they don't get mixed up, like what has happened here.
Mm-hmm.
And then follow the design principles again. Following proper design principles is going to help you, because if you try to write the CSS files, like I said, you write 100 lines and then you see it is not responsive, so you write another 100 lines below that, making it like a
Mm-hmm.
1,000 line CSS page. Instead of that, try to make it responsive right from the beginning, and make the designs, like the code, look very compact, so that even further, after 3 years, you can go back to the code and recognize what you've done.
Correct. Okay. So yeah, and like Monish Sethi is telling like Patrick Heng is my inspiration also.
Yeah, Patrick Heng is a very good We saw it just by the website, how responsive and intuitively it was made. Like every part of that website was taken care of. Like he did not miss out one single part. You can
Mm-hmm.
even see the loading part here in the beginning,
Yeah, the
and everything is
animations.
response. Yeah, everything is dynamic here. So only if I move the cursor, these are moving. So if I keep it here, nothing moves.
Mm-hmm.
If I move it, the components are responding to the action made.
Mm-hmm.
We can see this also. These elements here. If I keep it like this, it stops moving. But if I do this, it just keeps doing this. So you can do all of this only when you're very well versed with the first part of web develop front end web development. Like I said, the JavaScript and the CSS part.
Okay.
So this is it for today's workshop, guys. I hope you've
Okay,
learned
so
something out of it, and I hope this helps you get started with your front end development journey.
yeah. So do we have any question in comment section? Guys, if you have any question, feel free to ask, drop in our comment box, and we'll pick it up, and Shankar will going to answer your questions. So, apart from this React, Shankar, so like
Hmm?
as of now, how many projects you have built so far? Okay,
Apart from React.js, I'm sorry. Yeah.
no, no, no,
Apart
it's
from
okay.
React.js,
Yeah, no, no,
yeah.
apart
Apart
not
from
apart from React.js, like while working with React.js, like how many projects you have built and what and all challenges you have faced.
So, like I said, I started my web development journey like around 2019, 2018. That is
Mm-hmm.
when I started working on projects. I did a few, couple of personal projects, but
Mm-hmm.
as a part of a organization, I've worked on different technologies. Like I worked on
Mm-hmm.
Django, and
Okay.
then which is completely Python based. And
Okay.
then I started working with Express.js and the Mern stack,
Mm-hmm.
but I ignored that React.js part because that was not required for my project. And
Mm-hmm.
then when I joined ClickUp as an organization, that is where I learned React.js. The main challenges I faced is, like I said, only after you have mastered JavaScript, I'd suggest for you to go on to JavaScript frameworks. So
Okay.
I hurried up in the JavaScript part, and I faced a few difficulties in the while learning React.js. So when you're learning JavaScript, be very this is a very underrated and not spoken of. I'd suggest if
Mm-hmm.
you're becoming a web developer, DSA is not going to be a big task for you because front end web developer doesn't need that much of DSA.
Mm-hmm.
Array and string तक चल जाता है. पर if you're learning JavaScript and if you want proper front end development experience, I'd suggest do DSA in JavaScript first.
Okay.
Try DSA in JavaScript, learn array methods like map, slice, and then there are so many
Mm-hmm.
array methods, and then learn about string, and then how you can manipulate it, and then there are so many concepts in JavaScript also, like dereferencing,
Mm-hmm.
referencing, and then function currying, variable hoisting.
Uh-huh.
There are many different concepts, and these are all top interview questions, guys. So I'm very sure if you're attending a JavaScript developer or React.js developer interview, they will ask you
Mm-hmm.
what is variable hoisting, what are the features of React.js, what is function currying, how is it
Mm-hmm.
helpful, what are hooks, why what is state management,
Correct.
explain a few hooks. So these are like very these are
Like
generic questions for
frequently
your
asked.
frequently asked
Yeah.
interview questions for your front end developer role.
Okay. 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 So, if we'll talk about React only,
Yeah.
so so if we'll how to start with React. Let's say someone want to build a project in React. Okay, so what are the key feature he would know? Like, okay, I need to work on React. I need to fix out these things about this project. Let's say I have an idea. I want to build a
Okay.
to-do list. So, what are all the elements and the key components which we need to think about it before start working on a project?
Yeah, the key points that I would suggest you to do is because as a beginner,
Mm-hmm.
when I was trying to get my hands dirty with the React.js,
Mm-hmm.
so I tried to include a lot of features onto my project. So
Okay.
don't make it that basis. Only include the features which are required by your project.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say I know 10 different features. I don't have to implement all 10 onto my project just because I know them. So if you're making
Mm-hmm.
a to-do list, for instance, use
Mm-hmm.
only which are required by a to-do list. Like state management obviously required for to-do list, because if you're making, let's say if you're making three different parts in to-do list, which is like doing, done, and then to be done,
Uh-huh.
through different parts. So you'll have to
Yes.
maintain that state, and then if you've converted, if once you press once you check the to-do list task, it has to go
Mm-hmm.
on to the done part, right? So that is where you
Okay.
use state management. So that is where you
Mm-hmm.
learn state management, and you use the most like abstract and appropriate hook for that. So you have to know which hook to use, and that will be
Okay.
only possible once you practice enough and then know what that hook does. So like I
Okay.
said, use state hook uses two variables, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that is just a normal array of two elements. One element is to store a set of data, and the other element is to set the data onto that
Okay.
variable.
Mm-hmm.
So when can you use that hook? So you have to know when to use that hook. For instance,
Okay.
like I said, right? So you're storing, let's say you're you're using something from the Gmail API, from the Google
Mm-hmm.
API. So you have to store that API token on your access token on your code, right? So you can use that. You can use code like access token, set access token.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you fetch that access token from an API call, use set access token function, and then inside the bracket send that access token, which will be stored on the access token variable from that state
Okay.
hook. And then you can use
Mm-hmm.
that access token as a variable in all other components. So this is use state component hook, which you can be used.
Okay. Okay. So, Shankar, let's say if someone wants hands-on experience with React projects, so
Hmm.
do you know about any platforms or other things which will help in terms of, let's say, hackathons are there? So, how to find the hackathons based on React or the web development or the front-end development?
I'd suggest start with Cypher Schools.
Okay.
It
Okay.
has a React.js resources, but
Yeah.
but if you're trying to look for like wide range of like different sources, I'd suggest stick to Free Code Camp, which is a very good source.
Okay.
And then, like Monish Shetty is commenting, Dev Post is a very good place for you to know about all this resources.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'd suggest just stick to the documentation as a whole.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Because only if you learn from documentation, you'll know the complete details of, let's say let's say you're learning from W3 schools. That is the
Mm-hmm.
data that they have curated, and that is the things that they think which is important, and not the whole thing. So I'd suggest
Mm-hmm.
stick to the original documentation.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you're doing projects, it is okay for you to do code along projects.
Mm-hmm.
So, but code along projects won't give you that intuition to write your own code, because every time
Mm-hmm.
the next time you're trying to code, you'll want some external help. So, I'd suggest do some code along projects, and then go on
Mm-hmm.
to build developing projects on your own. Just don't do code along projects and leave it.
Okay. Great. So, if we'll talk about React only, so there's
Yeah,
a thing like normally we'll search the React in a Google or whatever anywhere. So they provide some documentations, right? The
yeah.
the learning part and the documentation. So is it matlab good enough to start with those documentations?
Uh, like I said, you can only learn to do something by doing it, right? So you
Mm-hmm.
cannot sit and watch football for 100 hours and tell you have learned football. You can only
Uh-huh.
learn football by going out in the field and practicing. You cannot
Yeah.
sit and watch 100 hours of football and learn football. So I'd
Mm-hmm.
suggest, no matter how much how many videos you watch on React.js, no matter
Yeah.
how many tutorials you go through, it will be only good for you to get started by uh, watching reading the documentation and doing your code by yourself. So I'd
Mm-hmm.
suggest the documentation is good enough for you to start, because if you go to the getting started page, they'll give you
Mm-hmm.
a tiny bit of starter code, and
Yeah.
they explain every component of that code, every keyword and every
Mm-hmm.
token of that code to you. And then if you don't understand, you can use external help. You can just use external help from other sources.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, great. So I guess there is no other questions. As of now, we don't have any questions. So, okay, Shankar. So this, okay, guys. So this is about today's event. It's basically on the front end technologies, where he explained about the entire React thing, the vanilla JS, and as well as the HTML and CSS. If you have any queries regarding any sort of thing, like for React or JS, anything, so you can feel free to ask in community as well. Meanwhile, I'll drop his LinkedIn profile as well in our community. If you want to directly connect with him, you can connect with him. So, Shankar, any other thing would you
Yes.
like to share? So,
Yeah,
or
it,
else,
it was it was a great session, workshop session for front end, all the front end developer enthusiasts who've joined us to learn something. I hope I've conveyed something from this.
yeah.
So stop, and I suggest stop searching, waiting for motivation, and just get started with it.
Okay.
Get your hands dirty, learn JavaScript, learn React, do some projects, and I wish everybody a very good luck and a happy weekend.
Okay. So, okay, guys. So this is it for the today's session. Next week, we'll try some different things. So meanwhile, I'll drop some of the messages in community also, like what kind of thing you want for the next workshop, whether it could be on backend or whether it could be on designing, whether it could be on a competitive programming, anything. So just feel free to drop your suggestion as well. And yeah, that is it for today's
Yes,
session. So we'll meet in the next session. Hope so. I guess if you're ready, Shankar, for backend also, the next week or next to next week, we'll plan about the
yes, yes.
workshop.
Let's prepare well for the backend and many more workshops such like this.
Yeah, sure. Okay, guys. Have a great day. Bye bye. Bye,
Bye,
Shankar.
guys. Bye,
Yeah,
bye, Sanskar.
bye.